Shalom, welcome to Yeshiva Pirkei Shoshanim in association with Nativ. My name is Davon Mays.
And I'm Tiaho Boko.
And we are dealing with Bnei Noach, Africa. And today we are going to deal with Moshiac. So, Tiho, do you need to be able to share your screen? Go ahead, you should be good.
Okay, cool. Share. No, I don't want to open this.
There we go. I see it.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to have a very interesting lesson today on the topic of Moshiac, or as many calls Messiah. It's very interesting because, many people, I believe they've got a very twisted understanding of Moshiac, and unfortunately, you can't really blame them because of the exposure that they have been put on, especially because of Christianity being the main religion in the world, and it has sort of like twisted the Jewish understanding of Jewish perspective of Moshiac. So today we'll just have an intro on this topic, and then next week we'll then get to part 2 of it, and just to get deep into it. We don't want to rush it. It's a very important topic, so it's very important that we take it nicely and slowly so we can have a good understanding of what is covered in here. And if it happens that you feel like after covering part 2, there's still a lot that is missing, remember, this is just to provoke in you an interest to go and research more on these topics. And Dave, I think we need to also sort of like recommend some books that people maybe can go and check in order to have a deep understanding on these topics.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So let's see what is covered in here. Okay. You see there it says Messiah 1. You will see that in the Jewish understanding of their scripture, there are 2 Messiah. There's Messiah, there's Moshiach ben Yosef and Moshiach ben David. So many times when people talk about Messiah, they are actually referring to Moshiach ben David. But let's just start. Let's see what is covered here, and we'll give more information where necessary. Introduction. The pre-Messianic era. Messianic era and identity of Messiah himself are complicated and often misunderstood topics that involves number of people and process of unfolding events. While the grand details are known with certainty, specific elements must remain speculation until the actual time comes. In this lesson, we will review the facts and questions regarding the coming of Messiah. Pre-Masonic era. So here we are talking about the things that needs to take place before Messiah comes, right? That's why we say pre-Masonic era. Numerous scriptural prophecies, Midrashim, and other sources tell us that as the time of Messiah draws near, the world will experience changes and upheavals. Many of these will be positive, while others, unfortunately, will be devastating. So when we look at Isaiah 59, verse 15, it says, truth will fail. The Talmud explains this word, nederet, as also related to the word for flocks. The implication of the verse is that the truth will fail because the Torah. Let's see again. The implication of this verse is that the truth will fail because the Torah world will be divided into various groups or flocks, each of which will claim the truth for its own. True Torah and faith will become indistinguishable from that which is false. So we see here that it's just going to, many groups are going to be formed, each claiming that they have got the truth, you know. So this one says, no, you don't have the truth, we have the truth. Yes, you know. And those are some of the signs that will be manifested just before the Masonic era. And it will be very difficult to distinguish between the truth of the Torah and the false teachings. So one has to apply himself or herself fully in order to be able to separate between the false and the truth. Atheism will engulf the world, and religious studies will become despised in the era preceding the Messiah. The Jewish world will not be spared from this calamity. Many Jews will abandon the Torah and their faith as well. However, the wise will recognize that this torrent of disbelief is a test and that they must remain firm in their faith. This is interpretation of the verse. Let's see there. The verse is Daniel chapter 12, verse 15, that says, many shall purify themselves, make themselves white and be refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but they that are wise shall understand. The wise shall understand. Yes, Dave?
Just real quick, touching on when you talked about how the Torah will be divided up into flocks and everybody will claim to have the truth for themselves. There's a verse in Proverbs that says, when there is no revelation, happy is he who keeps the law. So even though we don't have a prophet, we don't have like that direct authority to Hashem, like, you know, the people had back in ancient times.
Sure.
If you keep the law, if you know your Torah, like David says, when you have your Torah, when you know exactly what to do, when you have a righteous rabbi, if you have questions, like in Deuteronomy 17, it says, if you can't make sense of something, you go to the priest or the judges in those days. Happy is he who keeps the law when there is no revelation.
Yep. Thank you very much. So let me repeat the verse again. Many shall purify themselves, make themselves white, be refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but they that are wise shall understand. So the wicked don't have understanding. They look at these ones that eventually have understanding of what's happening, and they laugh at them. I'm like, you are crazy. Why would you live your life like that? Do you think there's God? You know, and that's why on top it says, it says here, where is that?
Atheism will engulf the world. Is that where he's going?
Yes. It says atheism will engulf the world, and religious studies will become despised in the era preceding Messiah. So they'll look at you and say, you're wasting your time. You could be, you know, studying something beneficial to you and the world at that time. But because they lack understanding, this is nonsense to them. There are many who are far from Torah and the truth, however, who will see what is happening and realize it's important. Oh, and okay, who will see what is happening and realize its import. They will return to God, yet they will suffer ridicule for abandoning the norms of secular culture. This is the meaning of the verse, Isaiah 59, verse 15. He who departs from evil will be considered a fool. So I think that's what we're talking about now, that they will ridicule you. They will think something is not right in here. So social and national upheaval decline. This decline in religious unity will be partially the result of general global decline in values, morals, and important social institutions, because change will advance so rapidly, parents and children will experience the world on radically different terms. As a result, there will be no respect for the elderly or the one's parents. Governments will become godless and economies will fail. And I think we are starting to see this kind of things in the world now. It says this will all be accompanied by sudden increase in the world population. And this will be time of tremendous strain. Midrash states, 1/3 of the world's suffering will come in the generation before the Messiah. Did you know that? Like, I read this, I was like, wow. And take into consideration what is happening now in Europe with this war. It's not only in Europe, I mean, Middle East and other places, in Africa here, there's a lot that is happening, and all these things, we need to be very, very careful.
It's coming from every direction.
Yes.
Yes.
According to some recent authorities, there will be an explosion of secular and scientific knowledge before the coming of Moshiac. This is understood from passage in Zohar in the 600th year of the 6th millennium. The supernal gates of wisdom and the lower wellsprings of wisdom will open. This will prepare the world to enter the 7th millennium, just as the man prepares for the Sabbath before sunset. I should have taken my classes. This writing here, it's a little bit difficult for me to read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's continue. Let's continue with this interesting topic. This prophecy establishes Hebrew year 560. So I think
5,600.
Sorry, 5,600. 1,839, 1,840. So I think this was written in 2017, right? What year is it now in the Jewish calendar? So you will have to do some little bit more calculations, but I think, this was written in 2017, so we might have to add 5 more years on this. As the state of the new era in the human knowledge. Oh, okay, no, let's read again. This prophecy established the Hebrew year 5,600, 1839, 1840 as the start of the new era in the human knowledge. Though we cannot tie this Zohar to any specific event in that year, it does not correspond to the onset of the scientific revolution and modern technological era. Okay, I see now. We don't have to. I misunderstood.
That's just referring to what the Zohar was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah,
our
sure.
year. Yeah.
Okay, so on this topic of pre-millennial, pre-Masonic era, there are a few things that needs to happen. I think now that's where we sort of like go through them, and then let me just check here. Okay, cool. Okay, we will actually go deep into each part, all the things that needs to happen before Moshiac ben David actually comes. But let's just continue here. The ingathering of exiles. It's one of the most important checklist. One of the checklists that needs to happen as part of the Masonic era. So it says here, he will gather the dispersed of Israel. And then it says Psalms 147 verse 2, God will then bring back your remnant and have mercy on you. God, your Lord, will once again gather you from among all the nations where he scattered you. Deuteronomy 30 verse 3. And then here it says, either after or concurrent with the pre-Masonic upheavals, there will be a return of the Jewish people to their ancestral land. The unfolding of this process, whether gradual or sudden, miraculous or natural is uncertain. However it occurs, it will only be completed by Messiah himself. And then let's go to Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11 to 12. It says, on that day, God will stretch forth his hand a second time to recover his people. He will send up a banner for the nations, assemble the dispersed of Israel, and gather together the scattered of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So this is a very interesting one. That, you know, as a former Christian, it's a serious problem. That's why the only way you can say is that, no, anything that JC didn't do during his time on earth will do it the second time. Because, I mean, how do you answer this? Because, you know, the dispersed of Israel, they were not gathered during his time, right? But let's hear what Dave has to say. Do you want to say something, Dave?
Yes, I think we definitely have to unpack these verses. I think this is a good stopping point because in the next lesson, I think, can you scroll up just a little bit back to the very right there? Okay, so when it says he will gather the dispersed of Israel, and then Deuteronomy says he will bring back Isaiah 11. Again, everything is talking about a gathering, a gathering. We see multiple verses talking about this gathering of Israel. And again, myself coming out of Christianity, the failed prophecies in the New Testament, the complete opposite happened. Israel was kicked out of the land. They went into captivity. The temple was destroyed. This is completely opposite of the New Testament promises of what the Messiah is supposed to do. And I think if we go through Isaiah 11 verses 1 through 12 individually, we can see the multiple failures and how they had to constantly move the goalpost to clean up the mess that Paul preached, because Paul was talking about an imminent return. Jesus spoke of an imminent return. None of these things took place. Paul even goes so far as to say in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, don't even, act like you're married if you have a wife, because they was expecting this immediate return. Jesus said, before you go around the towns of Israel, I'm going to come back, so the James chapter 1 verse 1 says he's speaking to the 12 tribes that are scattered. Well, we see right here, it says God will bring back your remnants and have mercy on you. God, your Lord, will once again gather you from among the nations where he scattered you. James is telling you he's addressing the 12 scattered tribes. What happened? So I think this is where we need to do a comparison of how the church has to constantly spiritualize and clean up the failures in the New Testament compared with what the Tanakh actually teaches about the gathering of Israel. Because if we don't address this, then it's going to go over people's head of how serious this part of it is. Because if Israel's not back in the land, you can't build the temple, you can't establish a covenant, and the prophecies basically fall apart. We haven't even gotten into Ezekiel 37. Like, there's so many things that talk about the gathering of Israel and
the rebuilding of the temple.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. Even the nations go into Israel to learn Torah in Isaiah chapter 2. The nations going to Israel to celebrate some of the feasts in Zechariah 14.
Feast. Sure.
Yeah, so I think this is a good.
We'll actually cover that. Sure, we'll actually go deep in those things in the second part of the Moshiac lesson. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I think again maybe we need to also sort of like have a discussion about the 12 tribes of Israel, the 10 of them being scattered around the world, and when did this thing happen?
The just 10 lost tribes.
Yeah, just to give people just an intro on this thing and not to assume that everyone is aware of the dispersed of the 10 tribes.
Right, right. So I think in part two we'll do a deep dive in just the actual Tanakh. We'll definitely use this as a reference point, but this will be a good discussion next time because we can because Isaiah 11, 1 through 12 is very crucial to what we are to expect to see. And
Mhm.
it's real easy to spiritualize things. And what's interesting is it says in the book of Luke that the kingdom comes without observation. Because the Pharisees was asking Jesus, when are we going to see this kingdom? He said, well, it's within you, right? But the Tanakh doesn't tell
Mm,
you that. We're physically
mm,
going to see a different world. We're physically going to see
sure.
the Messiah sitting on the throne of David. We're physically going to see peace in the world. It's not something to your own interpretation in your mind, how you're going to see it yourself, and this person is going to see it differently. No, this is going to be a physical change in the world. The knowledge of God will be around the whole world. It's going to be a different world. So, yeah, we definitely have to do a
Yeah,
deep dive on this. And
sure.
yeah, so we can stop there, and we will see you guys next week, and we'll continue.
Thank you very much.
All right, shalom.